All right, folks, here we go on this Thursday. Yes. Good afternoon. We're going to be starting in just 3 minutes, 3 minutes out. Boy, a lot of legal news as well. That is, I think that is a remarkable arrest regarding the person that allegedly planted those pipe bombs. I mean, that has been going on. That is not an easy case. We're going to talk with our legal expert, attorney Stephanie Murphy. Now, also continues to be the Brian Walsh case. Very interesting developments with that case as well. And I want to also ask her. I also mentioned, now, I do refer to her as our legal expert, attorney Stephanie Murphy. And then I realized last week that some people were asking, well, is she an attorney? So, all right, who knows? Maybe they think, well, it doesn't mean, they practice, that maybe she just teaches a law class. So from now on, it's attorney Stephanie Murphy, who I consider to be a legal expert, but she's a practicing attorney. And for some of you that are watching, that I know that I have encouraged to call her, especially in regards to the Central Falls case. We're probably not going to talk about it, but the person that's watching, I don't know if you've called. I told you to call her. I can't help you. All I can do is guide you, have a conversation with her. You're going to talk just 2 minutes, actually. But, and then we're also going to talk about the man charged in the crash, 295. That week was last night. I heard it was just brutal. And then some of the other legal cases. The Walsh case, I think, is really interesting. And then the delivery driver with Amazon. I wonder if what type of culpability that Amazon might face in regards to the fact that, again, it's all alleged. He's a suspect, but he was arrested. And they're basically saying that it's like he was using his Amazon truck as the getaway vehicle. So, folks, with that, we are going to start at 1:06 on this Thursday, December 4th. Now, as I tell people that contact me, and as I was communicating with someone last night who seemingly could use some legal representation and or guidance, it all starts with the phone call. She can't help you if you don't call. It's like a doctor. Marin Barrett Murphy, team criminal defense attorneys, 50 years combined Rhode Island criminal defense experience. Your fight becomes their fight. Call them 401-228-8271. If you don't call, I don't feel comfortable listening to details. I can't help you. I'm guiding you. I'm giving you the path. This is who you should call. Some of you that contact me regarding either yourself or family member, I can't. This is who I'm just pushing you in that direction. If you don't call her, I can't help you. First of all, I can't help you, but I'm helping you. You got to help me. You got to help my brother. I'm trying to help him by trying to guide him to someone who can help him. Marin Barrett Murphy, 401-228-8271. All right, let's bring her on. She is attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, I would like to start, and we don't have all the details as of yet, but to me, this is an extraordinary arrest in the nation's capital regarding this individual that allegedly is the person that planted some pipe bombs. Whoever it was, to me, you could always tell that they certainly seemed to, I don't know what they were doing, but they were very, very cautious, and with their hood, and the only things that you really tell, the sneakers. But you just heard in the news where they're saying, well, the bombs didn't go off. So, again, there's still a lot more details to come. But I'm just curious, first glance, some of your thoughts on this pipe bomb arrest in D.C.
Well, first of all, the crime happened a while ago. The alleged crime happened a while ago. So for him not to get arrested for so many years, it'll be interesting to learn why it took so long in terms of what evidence they had. seems from the stories that I'm hearing is that they had the evidence, but didn't really look at it the right way and stuff like that. So it'll be really interesting to kind of see how they crack the case at this point and weren't able to crack it beforehand, or if it's a weak case and that's why no arrests were made. So I'm kind of with understanding that just everything wasn't really looked at the right way, and it could be a really strong case against this individual. But it'll be interesting to see kind of the timeline of the information about the videos, about, camera footage, everything that we talk about weekly in terms of all the cameras and the eyes on you and kind of why it took so long. So it's pretty interesting. And, we don't know what the charges are per se yet, but I mean, it could have been potentially so deadly and costly. And luckily that didn't happen, but he's still responsible if he's found guilty or admits to, everything that was done to try to set this in motion.
That's interesting about the evidence and how long it took. Could you touch on that? That is interesting, the amount of time. I would think how long it's taken would certainly maybe play to his benefit, but the evidence, and maybe they had the evidence, but they didn't bring it. Touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so definitely, typically when a crime happens or an alleged crime happens, the police are pretty quick to put everything together and make an arrest to get this person off the street, to have them be held accountable and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. Sometimes cases that take a while is because there's a lack of evidence and they're still trying to gather evidence, or it could be that they just didn't put everything together and look at the evidence they had correctly. But I know as a defense attorney, I'm kind of much more excited when it takes the police a while to arrest my client than if they make the arrest immediately. So from a defense perspective, I think it, could possibly help, but you never know until you find out the real reasons why, until the case gets, more told to the public of what happened.
Stephanie, let's talk about the Brian Walsh case. There's a lot of different elements to this. One of the things that I want to touch on is if you could touch on sometimes attorneys, it's ultimately the client that makes the decisions. And in this particular case, his defense that they laid out in opening argument was he basically was finishing the dishes, came upstairs, she's dead. He panicked and decided to dismember and get rid of her. Already there's been speculation. So he did plead guilty to getting rid of the body, but to go on that fact, just a couple months ago when you and I talked about that case of the man admitted that he and the wife had a violent argument and then he killed her, the doctor, and then he panicked and threw the wife in the pond. He did get prison, but not life in prison. But I'm very interested and have some questions, your thoughts on this Brian Walsh case.
Yeah, so it's just very interesting about the charges that we talked about last time that he pled to, basically him admitting that he had some role in this after the fact, but not in, the actual killing of her. I find that really interesting and very unique, and not really sure why it was done, other than that there was some evidence that could have been really harmful in the trial, and they wanted the jury to focus on, the murder, manslaughter, whatever the prosecution wanted, the jury to focus on. But it is very interesting in terms of, different admissions to the, the lesser crimes and stuff like that. But the trial's been really interesting. As an attorney, you always like to listen to your clients, but there's a lot that you can say, hey, listen, I'm the attorney and this is how we're proceeding. There's certain things such as pleading guilty, testifying, all of that. That's absolutely up to the defendant, and the attorney can't stop someone from doing that. But typically in a case, the theory of the case, the witnesses called and stuff like that, that's definitely on the attorney to make the decision and explain why, to the client. So I really don't think it was just a defendant making the decision about the theory. Unfortunately, that's probably the best theory that they can come up with. Juries like to hear a theory, a story, and to present the case around. So it's something that you do have to come up with as a defense attorney. You don't have to, but it definitely goes a lot better. So I really do think it was, a combined effort of this is the best way to present the facts and the evidence against him to the jury.
One of the audio tapes they played was they're sitting, I believe, at his house, or maybe at his attorney's house, and he agreed, yeah, I'll answer questions, and she's with him. And as they're questioning him, they go through the fact that he allowed them to get some devices, and that's how they found the Google searches. Could you touch on, like, to me, I don't think I don't know this, but I don't think his attorney would have let him sit for that interview if she had known that these searches we're on these devices, because otherwise, I just wonder, when you're dealing with a client along the lines of, you really need to tell me everything, because then otherwise, to me, it sounded like maybe the attorney was caught off guard.
Yeah, the most frustrating thing I think in my practice is when I have that conversation with my client of, hey, listen, I'm here to help, but if I don't know the information, I don't know what can hurt you and what can't hurt you. So you need to tell me everything, and then we can go from there. Because in that circumstance, the attorney most likely probably took her client's word that there's nothing on the device. And a lot of times I think defendants think, oh no, I wiped it clean, I did that. It's not gone. And I think as an attorney, you have to explain that. Like, you have to be honest with me. I'm not going to go to the police and say there's information on it. What I will do is I will object to any search of that device and make them go through the warrant process, and also object to that warrant. But without you knowing that it could be there, I think that's the worst thing a client can do, is not be open and honest with their attorney. We can't help you if we don't know what we have to protect you from.
One more question on the Brian Walsh case, Stephanie. There's speculation, even as I'm watching some of the. I was going back and forth, and then it's just such a time commitment. I may go next week, but they're basically, some of the commentators are questioning the nature of why even go through this, because unless something changes, it seems pretty open and shut. And I don't know how he gets on the stand that everything would then be fair play, that they could ask him about these things.
Yeah, I mean, him taking the stand could definitely be very problematic. And then if he lies while on the stand, that creates more of a problem for sentencing and stuff like that. So I don't know as much, of course, as everyone else or the attorneys involved in the case, but I would be surprised if he takes the stand, but also surprised if he doesn't take the stand, just because of how the defense is presenting their case. So it'll be really, really interesting. But I just don't, I guess I'm still kind of shocked at the fact that he pled to some charges first. And I kind of can't get over that. And then going to trial on the more serious charges when you've already, the jury already knows of what you did after the fact. To me, that's a hard hurdle for me to get past in my head.
Yeah, and the Google searches of, how to dispose of a body and how to dismember a body, and when does a
I mean,
body start to,
yeah, I think that's
hours
probably
after this
why
happened.
it's probably why he had to plead to those underlying charges, because of those Google searches. So I think, those were going to come in no matter what. And if he was fighting that charge, they might not be able to explain those searches. But his theory is that he disposed of the body after that. He just, didn't do anything to facilitate the murder. And now you have these searches, and the defense attorneys can explain those searches by saying, hey, he didn't do this, but he was in this situation. He made a bad mistake and Googled, searched, and then did stuff after the fact. But I think that's the only reason why I think the defense attorneys would have had him plead to those charges, is to explain those Google searches, which are very damaging.
Now, some local stories. You had a situation on 295. Now, we don't have all the facts yet, still being developed, but apparently two drivers, this is what we've been told, driving aggressively. I've heard that, one driver pulled in front of the other, and then may have, as they call it, people say they pull up, where they kind of hit the brakes. The other person goes flying off of 295, crashes into a tree, deceased. He was arrested. And people are surprised that he's let out on bail.
Yeah, well, first of all, my heart breaks for, the families involved and everything like that. What a horrific event. It brings me back to the, Olivia from East Greenwich, who this happened to on New Year's Eve, New Year's
Yes.
Day. Very similar situation where the person fled and stuff like that. As we talked about before, there's rules and there's a presumption of bail in this country that you're innocent until proven guilty. And, there's only certain cases where the state can ask for a hold without bail. And if you're not on probation or not a bail violator, there's only a few handful of charges that you can get held without bail. So unfortunately, this is one of these cases where the charges, they're serious, they're horrific, but they're not a hold without bail case, such as child molestation, rape, murder, selling drugs. So unfortunately, he gets bail, and whether or not he can post it, whether or not he violates bail, those are all things, that we can watch in the future, but it is a charge that is bailable.
No, he didn't stay on the scene. They then went and got him. Does that hurt him? Police said that he did comply when they located him. But what about people are on the highway. This could happen today, tonight, whenever. And there's another driver who's being very aggressive with them. I had someone almost trying to imply that is there a rule for almost like self-defense if you're driving and there's someone that's aggressively driving? I don't want to say against you, but basically that's the way people view it, that it's like they're driving against them, these fights on the roadways.
I mean, I think my advice if you're in that situation is to not escalate the situation and try to pull over, move over, get the police on the phone. People aren't really, shouldn't really get involved in stuff like that. If you're the one that this is happening to, someone's being aggressive towards you, you can move over, pull over, put your hazards on, get off the exit ramp, call the police and stuff like that. It's just unfortunate the number of like road rage incidences and people getting angry behind the wheels, and it's at a devastating consequence too. My heart just breaks for everyone.
Under Rhode Island law, final question: two drivers are riding along, whatever reason, there's a disagreement. One cuts off the other goes flying off the roadway, and they lose their life. Traditionally in Rhode Island, would that be a jail case?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, and then leaving the scene, death resulting too, adds to it too. So the benchmarks are definitely time to serve, in all honesty. The length of, the length of how long you serve depends on a lot on the person, the criminal history and everything like that. But as we know, like what happened with Olivia and stuff like that, the person involved in that incident got time to
Yes.
serve, and then the conspirator who helped them kind of flee, all those people got time to serve. Whenever there's a death resulting from some sort of an intentional act, such as what happened, it seems like what happened here is absolutely a jail case. And I know somebody, a young female, I forgot her name, was just sentenced to 3 years to serve, I think, on a leaving the scene death resulting case up in Providence too. I forgot the facts of that case,
Right.
but
The
yes, it's
North
a
Main
jail
Street.
case.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
The pedestrian who was walking.
Now,
Yes.
Stephanie, this
Uh,
next oh, okay, that's a jail case as well. Wow.
yeah.
This Amazon story, there's a couple different facets to it. Number one, I'm hearing from people that claim that this guy had opened their packages, but what the police are basically alleging, in some ways, it's almost as if he was using the Amazon van as like a getaway car, that he would have his route, and then he knew of convenience stores, and over a period of time, according to police now, he robbed 17 of these stores, would then jump back into the van, put the coat on, start driving along, and then, police, they're looking for someone running, or they're looking for another vehicle, and he kind of blends in with the Amazon jacket. Now, a couple of things about this. Someone emailed me to ask you. They call it an armed robbery, and they're trying to, I think it was someone that's a friend of his, said that he only used a knife, but he threatened that he had a firearm. I think I know, but is the knife is still considered armed robbery?
It is, yes. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you wouldn't even think for an armed robbery that could be part of an armed robbery. So yes, a knife would definitely, it does not have to be a firearm or a fake gun or anything like that. A knife definitely goes for an armed robbery. Absolutely.
What about, is it a crime to threaten that you have a firearm, even if, I would think now they can't really prove that he had a firearm, but just to threaten that you did have a firearm?
Yes, absolutely. So just the threatening and saying, even if you don't have one, or you say you have a handgun and you have a water gun or something like that, absolutely, it's a threat that puts a person in fear of bodily harm. That's a crime right then and there.
Now, what about the fact, I mean, we don't know all the details, but I would think in some way this individual might actually have a decent alibi, because if they say to him, "Were you in this area on that day?" I think he could say, "Yeah, I was making a delivery there, and whoever that did this, maybe they resemble me." But what is your just first blank glance on this whole thing? It's an unusual case, and to me, this sounds like this is someone that would have like a decent alibi.
I think it's a very good planned, crime spree that was committed and stuff like that. I think the police are going to have a field day with cell phone location, text messages, what was robbed, when was it used. Like any case, just being in the wrong spot at the wrong time could definitely get you arrested, get you charged. But it's what else do they have? What was taken, surveillance cameras, cell phone data pings and stuff like that. They might be able to get them inside the convenience store, stuff like that. But I think it's a very planned out kind of spree that he went on. So some great arguments he could make.
I did I did get a question of is some of the store owners, is there any way that they could hold Amazon accountable?
I'm not really sure. I think it depends on the facts. I mean, that's like somebody, robbing a convenience store in a school bus or, something like that. I mean, you can always sue, you can always try to find them, you can sue anyone really for any reason, but whether or not it works out, that's up to the court system and the legal process. But I don't think Amazon had any knowledge of that, would ever think that this would be going on, like I just don't think it's a common result of, the employment that this would be a common result of him doing this.
Final story before we get to Murphy's Law. A man accused of exposing himself at this park. Now, according to the story, and we've heard of this, where there's online chatter and there seems to be, some kind of, it's all consensual. Adults, this case, I believe it was same sex, but they meet up at a park and they engage in activity. In this particular situation, got arrested. Could the people say, hey, listen, it's two adults, it's nobody's business, and we weren't doing anything illegal. We were both engaging in the act at this park.
Well, I think it comes down to whether or not what they're engaging to is legal activity inside a park, outside, appropriate behavior and everything like that. One of the stories I heard was that it was undercover cops, right, that came up to the person. So it was kind of a known thing that was going on, and the cops investigated. It seems like undercover, and they got, a proposition and stuff like that. So proposing something like that is also, another part of another crime. So I think it depends on the full picture of what people are doing, where they're located, consent, the age of everybody. But really, is that behavior appropriate? Where they were conducting this behavior. It's probably not the smartest thing to be doing.
Folks, it's time for Murphy's Law. This is a story that attorney Stephanie Murphy has found. Stephanie, what do you have this week?
So one of your listeners actually called and was asking about divorce cases. So it is something that we do, and something that I don't know if this listener did not know, but if you're married and your spouse files for divorce, even if you don't want the divorce will still be granted. So it's not a case where both parties have to agree or anything like that. So my advice to the listener is, get an attorney, file an answer. If one party wants a divorce, the divorce will go through eventually. So it's kind of protect yourself, protect, any marital assets, any individual assets, any inheritances, go to court, just don't show up. If not, everything that the other party asks for is going to get granted, and you're going to have to try to undo a divorce. So if you do get served with papers for a divorce, get an attorney, fight for what's equitably yours and stuff like that. Just don't ignore it. And definitely go to court. If not, a judgment would be issued against you for whatever, your spouse was asking for. So I thought it was a really great question from a listener. So some friendly advice: answer, get an attorney, ask for what you deserve, ask for what you think you are entitled to, and definitely show up. You don't want to not show up for a divorce.
All right, folks, again, it's attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, excellent as always, and we'll talk to you again.
Great. Thanks, John. Bye.
All right, folks, there it is. Attorney Stephanie Murphy. Well, good afternoon, everyone. She is terrific. Now, I want to mention Cheryl, you need to call her. Cheryl needs to call her. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but Cheryl, there it is. 401-228-8271. Cheryl was messaging with me last night. We've had her on the program. I know you're scared. You need to contact her. So, yes, at least have a conversation with her. Yes. So there it is. And then go in. Now, folks, remember, because you see her here, it's a free consultation. There's no charge. So at least get some questions answered. And as you heard, attorney Stephanie Murphy can refer you to someone if for whatever reason the case that they can't handle or they don't handle that type of law. But I am giving you, that is my gift to you, a path to get some legal advice. So you just say you're a friend of the show. All right, let's get down to some business. And folks, this portion of the program, first of all, I do want to remind you, and I want to say good afternoon to Ed and his lovely wife. They stopped in at PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, and they went all out. They got the wreaths. They got, I believe they got their tree. They said they were so glad to do it. They sent it from last night when they were decorating their home. Folks, they're just terrific, and it's a local family business. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Look for them on Facebook, but they have Fraser fir trees, custom handmade wreaths. They have Christmas swag, hanging baskets, roping, decorative pots and cemetery baskets, Christmas crafts. Gift certificates are available. They're open 7 days a week. Look for them. Steve and Debbie, Junior Byron and Lauren. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Hello to Jane Rice and everyone. Folks, we will be live tonight. We are going to do a live stream tonight, maybe on Central Falls, maybe on, Central Falls has two stories. Central Falls still has the fallout. I have people asking for information about the situation with the 8 people charged in Erica. And it is interesting that one of the people that is tied in with that case, for whatever reason, it's one of the males, and he was, I don't remember all the details, but there's something a little unusual about that. And as I have told people, it's very possible that some of these individuals are talking. So very, very possible that someone is talking in that case. And remember, when the train is leaving the station, you want to make sure that you are not under the train, so to speak. So I would definitely do something sooner than later. But we are going to be live tonight. Now, I also want to touch on, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but we have been, I have been in communication with the family, and it's interesting. There still has been no rest. There has been no rest. That little angel, 19 years old, who had so much going in her life, and the family is planning the funeral. And so when we do these stories, I then hear from people. And sometimes this, as I've talked about, there are people, they just want to shut things down. They almost want to pretend it didn't happen. And so this is the 19-year-old girl who was shot and killed in Central Falls over the weekend. And the male a male that she was with was then also, he's still, I believe, in very serious condition, if not critical condition, in the hospital. But I have been in touch with the family, and the family has been monitoring our coverage. And I want to, I realize, and sometimes I don't get into detail, and I'm certainly not going to get into arguments with people, with certain people that don't know all the facts. But what people should realize, like the people that say, don't talk about a story like this, don't talk about it. And I had this woman, you should honor the family's wishes and not talk about it. First of all, the person saying it is not even a member of the family. I've been in touch with the family. The family welcomes me talking about it. This is unsolved, by the way. This is unsolved. I don't know how else to stress that. The person that did it is still out there. And so if we want to talk about this whole notion of don't talk about it, well, I talked about the Meyer Brophy Bayerman case when it happened, in the aftermath of that, August, September. As a matter of fact, we talked about that. That was 2021. More than anybody, more than anyone, Maya Brophy Behrman, August 1st, shot and killed, 3 in the morning, 3:30, Olney Street, right off of North Main Street in Providence. And we talked about it a lot. And I went and interviewed the parent. Same thing. These voices. Don't talk about it. Let her rest, as they said. Well, as a result of us talking about it, and me specifically talking about it, one of the individuals that was watching stepped forward, who still remains anonymous, but we raised a reward of $100,000. Anyone with information that led to conviction of the killer of Maya Brophy Behrman. And when I covered that trial, the people that did come forward repeatedly mentioned the reward. If I had, and so let me just, put this out there. Now, granted, listen, the police did a magnificent job with that, but that wasn't an easy case. And that was months. They didn't know what had happened. They got a few breaks. They recovered the gun. But my point is, if I had listened to that, just move on, let her rest. The family doesn't want you talking about the people weren't speaking on behalf of the family. I mean, it was so outrageous what happened to poor Maya. But I will be very adamant and take pride as I sat there in the court and they were asking people about the reward, people that had knowledge of what happened. And those people were then in court and testifying about it. And I'm not going to get into who got whatever. But my point is, I'm not saying police wouldn't have solved it, because then they did recover. It was Officer Malloy. He recovered the weapon that was used to kill those criminals, riding down Olney Street at 3:30 in the morning to avenge, they thought in their mind, the death of a rapper that was killed in South Providence shooting a music video in October of 2020. So, anyhow, my point is, the family put it out thanking me for the work we did on that. So I just want to be very clear with the, and as I've said to many of you, it doesn't deter us, but it doesn't stop me from talking about it. But I will never understand. There's still no arrest in this case. Now, granted, I'm not saying Central Falls Police aren't working on it. I know they are. I'm not. I also believe, due to the nature of the circumstances, I'd be pretty confident saying who they're looking for. And so, I mean, it wasn't, you had a group of people and so forth. And so, but this poor little girl, this 19-year-old girl, she was not. So my message to those people, just go away. I like to go hide under the bed. These people, they have no idea what they're talking about. And and this happens, a distant cousin suddenly just, stop talking about it. Don't talk about it. That's so childish and immature. Well, you're going to hear more about that. That story is about to break open. Yep. That story is about to break open. We'll get to that. I still have some more digging to do. So, but that is exactly right. And, this whole business, by the way, you're just doing it for clicks well, I don't know what to tell you. We certainly I didn't get media attention for covering the Maya case. We don't get the media, by the way, they ignored all the work we did with the Charlotte Lester case, the quote Local media, Channel 10 and 12, what's left of our local media, they they never acknowledge when these families, specifically point out that and thank us for the coverage, like Michelle Romano. So, but like the Maya case, the only reason those people came forward with the money to put up for the reward. And by the way, with the Maya Brophy Behrman case, that was the largest reward ever offered in Rhode Island. $100,000 reward with anyone that had information. And it was pulling teeth trying to get the rest of the media to report that. The only way those people knew is because I was putting it out, period. End of story. That's just a fact. Now, speaking of facts, it is a fact that you are going to love the Coesit Inn. 100%. I know you are. The Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue in West Warwick. It's lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. They also now have coffee at Coesit. Remember, the Coesit Inn, they can really accommodate large groups. The Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue in West Warwick. But these things, I tend to think, so what makes me think that the Central Falls Police have an idea about this? Well, they're not talking. They're not saying if anyone has any information. They're not right now. I mean, it could get to that. It could get to where then they're putting out information of who it is that they're looking for, that they need the public's assistance on. I mean, that definitely could happen, but we're certainly not there yet. So I think there is going to be a story regarding the Providence City Council and their use of the credit cards. So I was just talking about that with someone this morning, and it does seem like that the Attorney General's office should be involved in that. Now I'm seeing, now that they're saying that the guy from Amazon, that he was actually involved, I'm seeing, with 18 armed robberies. Stephanie is exactly right. When it comes to crime, that's a different one. That's different. He was essentially using the truck. He was using that as his getaway vehicle. So, and I also want to point out what a fantastic arrest by that is. And I want anyone that is watching, now I realize we're on AM 1380 and 99.9 FM, but that is Commander Todd Padalano, Senator, Deputy Chief Commander Todd Padalano. That's him putting the cuffs on that criminal who, it's my understanding, because I was checking out his Facebook, he seems to be associated with the Wiggins Village gang back now. I believe they said the driver is 36. So, but when he was, I saw some pictures on his Facebook from, I think it's like 2018 or 2017. So when he was in his 20s, he was very active with them. But you think about that. So he was planning robberies around the route and then could just say, oh, I'll just swing in here and commit a quick robbery as he's like rolling along. I mean, that is different, and been doing it, by the way, for a very long time, as a matter of fact. So, but that is, you want to talk about hands-on. That is Senator and Deputy Chief Commander Todd Padalano was the one that grabbed him. I'm seeing now that they're updating it. There could be more robberies now because this went back for so many years. I had 17. Channel 12 initially had 16. Now they're saying 18, but I think the number's even going to increase from there. So, but that was, I mean, look at that. That's not an easy one. And I also liked hearing the collaboration between Providence Police, Cranston Police, Woonsocket Police, Johnston Police. This guy was everywhere. And I heard that a common link was they figured out there was always an Amazon truck. And then as other people, I believe, have stated that then you can get the GPS of Amazon and it kind of goes from there. But he's real arrogant, this guy, that guy online. And he also, I have the video. Check out, we have it on DePietro.com. There's a video of him, the driver, going to the Cranston police station. And you got to see the video. You got to see the video, how cocky this guy is. And but that's a jail case. That is a jail case. Folks, I want to remind you, somebody put, probation, he'll be let out. Not like this. Not this string of robberies. And a knife is armed robbery. A knife is armed robbery. It's not, you don't get the penalties of having a firearm, but it's still armed robbery. This portion of the program brought to you by ServPro of Providence. Remember, when disaster strikes, ServPro of Providence. Call them 401-941-5500. Fast, thorough, professional. ServPro of Providence. When disaster strikes, if you have a fire, you're going to have fire damage, and you're going to have smoke damage, and you're going to have water damage. And with the water, you could have mold. ServPro of Providence. Give them a call today, 401-941-5500, 401-941-5500. Fast, thorough, professional. ServPro of Providence. Two very disturbing deaths, as I mentioned, over the holiday weekend. And there is a lot of talk about who the next governor is going to be. And I talked about it earlier on the radio show. But I would, I saw Aaron Gucci, the Republican. I saw him at a 5K on Saturday. And I believe that there's an appetite, I believe there's an appetite in Rhode Island for a candidate who will talk law and order. I think so, because there's definitely a feeling in the state that the criminals are just completely taking over right now. And I have heard, like other people have heard or mentioned and reported, that regarding that poor 23-year-old girl, that they were on the road and it was like a road rage incident and he cut her off. But it's still just absolutely terrible that, you don't know who's on 95 or 295. And I've talked about this for a while. Years ago, I don't ride with people who you never know who's in that other vehicle. And I've talked about it, the whole element of people that they're riding along and they give the table for one salute, or even far more graphic. And you never know the nutcase that could be in that car, whether it's on Route 10 or 95 or 295. As Attorney Murphy said, it's better to just get away from them. So, but these people trying to argue that, self-defense, he was just defending himself. What are you talking about? I mean, the basic account you're hearing is that it's very possible the two vehicles were going back and forth, and then he pulled in front of her and pulled up, and she veered off 295. I mean, it's terrible. Folks, this portion of the program, by the way, brought to you by Watson Materials. Call Sean, request a quote, 401-885-0600, 401-885-0600. Watson Materials. It's incredible what they can do with your outdoors, whether it's landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone, decorative stone. Watson Materials. 401-885-0600, 401-885-0600 for Watson materials. So at least they did. That's right. The team you can't trust is exactly right. Yep. Not in Cranston. Not in Cranston. What an arrest by that's Deputy Chief Padalano that put the cuffs on that guy. And those of you check out DePietro.com. I did post some of the things he was posting, that he was making different deliveries. I heard from someone just this morning that his neighbor caught that he was opening packages. I like what, and you know what else you have to be very careful about is a lot of these Amazon drivers. Amazon will say, "Give us the code to your garage, and then we could get in and put the packages in." Look who's making the deliveries, for crying out loud. I mean, that is just remarkable, but very, very good police work. I was glad to see that. And again, I want to go to Deputy Chief Senator Commander Padalano himself putting the cuffs on him and grabbing him in that way. I mean, I thought that was just awesome. And that happened Tuesday night. It was, if you see, we have the body cam footage on our website, DePietro.com. I mean, it was raining sideways. But and I don't know the full story, but I believe that they were starting to no, they don't. Not in Cranston. They were starting to get a good hint of who it was. But then then he pulled another robbery. And then I think that kicked Cranston police into motion of like, well, enough of this. And he also, he made a delivery to the Cranston Police Department where he's saying some unkind things towards police. So you see it scrolling on the screen for those that are watching on YouTube or X or Facebook. Details on DePietro.com, and then that brings you to the website. Hey, I want to remind you, it's still time. You could call Corey, get your garage epoxied. Remember, the clock is ticking because then they shut down. They can't do this type of stuff in the cold weather. 401-283-9815. Quality asphalt seal coating. 401-283-9815. Now, they could epoxy your garage and patio, decorative concrete flooring. They do it all. But it's quality asphalt seal coating. Call Corey today, 401-283-9815 for quality asphalt seal coating. They do just a really terrific job. And you can at least call and get a free quote and see whether or not you could get on the schedule, or maybe it's something to. It is interesting. Number one, look at some of the fallout for these. On the one hand, you have the porch pirates. So you have the people that are stealing packages that are left on people's porches. Now you have the Amazon drivers. And from what I understand, and I map it out on DePietro.com, so this guy, think of that. He's got his route, and he then either goes by this convenience store all the time or figures out that there's a convenience store there. So he would, from my understanding, park the Amazon van around the block and then take off the jacket and go in and rob the store with a knife, and then come running back and throw on the Amazon jacket. And as police are being called to the scene and everything else, and they're looking in the area, is there anyone on foot? Is there any car that's speeding off? And he's just very quietly riding off in the Amazon truck. And he just robbed. How many times did he do it? At least 18. I think it's going to go over 20. So that is a problem with Amazon. Not only are people stealing package deliveries, now you even have the drivers are committing armed robbery. And by the way, when he would leave the store, he would then go and drop off a package. So you have a built-in alibi. Now, granted, as Attorney Stephanie Murphy said, with GPS, they'll be able to figure out where he was, and his van is there, and the door is there, and he just jacket, and the Amazon basically acts as the getaway car. But I want to come back to, I don't hear anyone, I don't think the idea of law and order, I don't think it should just be for the Attorney General's race. I don't think it should just be for the AG's race. I think that the crimes that are happening, I believe it would resonate with someone who would like to be the next governor. I don't think it would hurt. Folks, I want to remind you about Kids Club on the Pike. Now remember, with Kids Club on the Pike, this is different options regarding childcare. So, and the fact of the matter is, right now, you want to make sure that you have a childcare situation that, where you feel safe about it and who's working there. And Kids Club on the Pike, they're located right off of 295 on Plainfield Pike, and is Kids Club on the Pike. And so call Kristen, because they have options coming up between Christmas and New Year's, and not everybody, some people still have to work. And so they do a special camp at that time. But Kids Club on the Pike, you're going to love it. And they're easy to get to. And on top of that, they also now have the Warwick location. So with Kids Club on the Pike, you're going to feel very, very safe and confident. And now they also have the Warwick location as well. So contact them with Kids Club on the Pike. Contact Kristen today. So folks, good afternoon. And I am going to look into, I'm hearing also this business. That's right. I am hearing about rumblings of the Providence City Council, and it is time that they go after them for why and how they were using that credit card. But I think right now I'll tell you, I believe I plan on having, I certainly want to have Aaron Gukian running for governor, John Laughlin running for lieutenant governor. I think that's a very good team. But another part of making the state safer and crack down on crime is, I think we should have checkpoints. They have them in Massachusetts. They've been very successful in Massachusetts. Sobriety checkpoints. They have them in Connecticut. They announce where they're going to be. But that is a very effective means of getting drunk drivers off the road. Rhode Island has a problem with bad drivers. Rhode Island has a problem with new arrivals that are giving driving privileges. But they claim Rhode Island, in our Constitution, we don't allow for checkpoints. Now, here's what's really going on. Smith Hill, Den of Thieves, General Assembly, they craft all the legislation. They would not like it if the state had checkpoints. I also understand at the State House, they try to say that as a tourism state, it would hurt tourism if you start to have these sobriety checkpoints. Well, it hasn't hurt Massachusetts, and it hasn't hurt Connecticut. So, but what does that even mean? That in Rhode Island, we tolerate the tourists to come here and get loaded and drive drunk on the roads. I think it is so pathetic. Over this past holiday weekend, state police arrested 55 people on DUI. What I would love to have, and I will ask him, but I think there should be legislation that we should have checkpoints. They have them in Massachusetts. They have them in Connecticut. And they alert the public. This Friday night, Just as an example, this Friday night, there's going to be a DUI checkpoint on, and then wherever, Main Street in East Greenwich, or there's going to be a DUI checkpoint on, I don't know, Reservoir Avenue in Cranston. The police would know where they get, the biggest span. And then you move it around to different communities. It's going to be on Thames Street in Newport, or it's going to be something like that. This business that somehow that they would that would impact tourism and it'd be bad for business. I don't buy into that. I think, everyone wants to, and I'll tell you what I like about the checkpoints, that they have in other states, and they have Massachusetts, they have in Connecticut. Why not? One of the things that I like about it is after you have a drunk driver and they take the life of someone, well, then everyone says throw the book at them, right? Like, oh, penalty and jail, but that doesn't bring the person back. As I have talked about in the past, I believe we need more proactive measures. We need to stop the drunk driver, or now you have people that are high that are driving. We need to stop that, stop them, catch them before they kill someone. We need more preventive measures like that. And Rhode doesn't have it, and it should. If you are listening to the radio, stay tuned for the 2:00 news. We'll be back on radio at 11. Everyone else, we will be back later tonight. Enjoy this Thursday.